Hi, and welcome to Georgina Blooms. Today we are going to make my orchid look like this one. Ha! Anyway, we're at Petal Pushers, and Corinne is going to show us how to care for and transplant an orchid. You will not want to miss this. I certainly don't. Hi, and welcome back. And joining me is Corinne Ennis, who is owner and operator of Petal Pushers Flower and Gift Shop on the Queensway in Keswick. And I opened the show with this beautiful orchid. I brought mine from home. It was headed for the compost. And if this one has half a chance of doing this, I'll be a happy camper and it won't go to the compost.
We'll try and revive it.
I've never done anything with it. Corinne asked me if it was in a separate pot in here. I don't know. But I'm going to move this so it doesn't get the cooties.
Okay, so we're going to dig into this plant and have a look and see what's going on. I can already see a couple of things that are wrong. So the first question I did ask was is it in a pot? Quite often they come in a pot cover, and they're in a plastic pot or an orchid pot, which this is. So I happen to have an empty one.
Okay.
So orchid,
lucky me.
Yeah, orchid pots typically they are plastic or sometimes clay.
Right.
They'll have, you can see inside here, there's kind of a raised bottom.
Yeah.
And that is meant for the roots to go around in there. Sometimes there'll be slits in the side to give it more aeration as well. This particular pot doesn't have that, but it's what I have in the shop, and we're going to try and revive your plant.
Okay, and I just so you know, I have 3 beautiful orchids at home. That one is in bloom now, but because we're ripping stuff apart, I could bring one.
So just before we get to pulling yours apart, I wanted to show this one. This is one I had in the shop, and it is kind of in a stage between the one you opened the show with and yours.
Right.
So this one still has flower spikes on it. You can see this green stem here, and you can actually see there's a stem shooting off to the side. So the reason I wanted to show this is because when you purchase these orchids, they're usually in full bloom.
Yeah.
And then eventually those blooms will die off.
Yeah.
But you never want to cut the flower spike off until it goes like a beigey brown tan color and it's dry.
Oh, like this.
Like that, yeah, like that. Because they will sometimes send out side shoots like this. So you will get more flowers. You can see there's a flower bud starting on the end of here.
Yeah.
So you want to keep this going, keep it in the bright light, and you'll get more blooms off of here. Sometimes you'll get them coming off other little side, they're called nodes, on the side of the stem. I don't know if the camera can catch this, but there's one right there. So sometimes it'll shoot another one out there.
Right.
So don't cut the flower spikes off until they've gone brown. The tip of this one is dying off, so we could cut that back, but this part is still green. It might send something out here.
Okay, and it's because of you explaining this that the one I have that's blooming at home is actually getting a second flush of bloom on the same stem. Now, I should have brought that one too.
Yes.
That would be less embarrassing.
The other thing I wanted to mention is these orchids that you buy in the stores are greenhouse. They're forced grown, so they're not on the regular blooming cycle.
Okay.
Orchids, typically in nature, will bloom between about November and January is when they kind of send out their flower spikes.
Okay.
So if you buy one in June that's in full flower, once all those flowers die down and these spikes die down, it could take a full year before this plant gets back onto its regular schedule that's built into the plant.
Okay.
So don't throw it out. If you have nice, healthy leaves, just keep it as a house plant, keep it in some bright light, and water it as usual. And I'm going to give you a few tips on watering orchids too. And it will revert back to its normal cycle.
Okay. So
what we're going to do is talk about yours.
This one has not bloomed in like years.
Yes.
And it was in a back room downstairs on a windowsill, but you can't really see it from outside. My nice ones are at a windowsill you can see from outside.
Okay.
And it just got to...
Yeah, so if we take a look at the back of this, you can see there's a lot of kind of dead roots back here.
Yeah.
We're going to clean them up. We're going to repot this, and as I said, I don't really see any pot in here, so let's just rip this out and see what happens.
Ah!
Okay. Yeah, there's no pot in there. It's just bark in this
Okay.
over pot. So it would benefit from being in a pot
Okay.
to
Oh
in here.
my.
And you can see actually a lot of these, because this bark
It's
is,
got a smell.
yeah, because this bark is wet. Feel that? So there's no drainage in here, and that's part of the reason you want to have a pot inside, so you can drain the excess water. So this bark has just been sitting in water, so it's actually rotted the roots off of this plant.
There is a little green.
Yeah, so we're going to go through it. We'll cut off all the dead stuff. You do have some aerial roots here. These are normal, and I'll explain those as well. But to start, you're going to need bark or moss. And actually this one, oh no, that one is in bark. I have one in moss too. Well, we'll get that at the break. So you're going to want to pot this in bark, bark chips.
Right. Okay.
So orchid plants are not terrestrial, which means they do not grow in soil.
Right.
They're epiphytes, so they attach themselves with these roots to crevices in trees and rocks or wherever they can find a place to attach themselves to, basically. And then they collect moisture from the air out of these, which are called aerial roots.
Okay.
So when you have them coming out of the top of your pot, that's normal.
Okay.
They're collecting the moisture out of the air.
Okay.
We just pot them in pots for our use for inside.
Right.
Yeah, there are orchid growers who will get like driftwood and stuff like that and attach them to pieces of wood.
Right. And I've seen other people do that because that's how they grow in nature.
Yeah. Okay, so the first step, when you buy the orchid bark, it's in a bag. It's usually really dry.
Okay.
Because it's just been bagged for who knows how long. This
Yeah.
one has a mix of bark and perlite in it.
Okay.
And so that's to help for kind of water retention and also aeration. So you don't want to keep, that's what happened here.
like-
These roots were left in water, so they've just rotted. They're just falling apart and they're
Okay.
soft and squishy. So that's a piece of bark.
Yeah.
So we want to get rid of
Ew.
those. So what I do is I usually, if I know I'm going to be doing this, I take the bark and soak it in a bucket of water overnight just to get it ready to go and prepared for putting in the pot.
Okay. All right. So this is
Yep.
that.
That in here
Soaking.
with water.
Okay.
So we're
And
just-
do you pre-measure or do you have?
No. It's just to get it wet.
Okay.
Yeah. So we will start by pruning off the roots, and then we'll get it ready to pot.
And before we do that, we'll do that when we come back. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. And Corinne already got started on the trimming because I'm going to have to, this is a paying gig now. Corinne was pointing out that this root is still okay, but this part will be cut off, or it's hard.
This one's still hard down at the end. We might leave that one.
Okay.
Where's that one? We found this one here. It looks not too bad, but when you touch it, it's empty.
Squishy.
So we're going to take it right
okay.
off. Yeah, there's nothing left inside there. So we're going
Okay.
to trim it off. These ones that are brown are no good. These are actually from flower spikes, these pieces.
Oh,
So we can take them down again too.
they're not going to do anything.
They're old ones. They're not coming back. So what you want to do, if you can feel the roots and they're squishy and there's nothing inside, sometimes you can just grab it, it pulls right off. And then, you just
Okay.
see like a little kind of thread inside. So we want to take off, we're going to be kind of brutal to this plant, but we're going to take off.
Well, I have been apparently totally ignoring it. So, yeah. So not to be afraid to do this stuff.
Yeah.
But even to feel for squishy or
Yeah,
not.
we do have some good like aerial roots up here. Now this one, see how it's green, silvery green up here, but then brown down here? I think
Yeah.
I'll just take that off there.
Okay,
So a couple of these I'm going to do that with,
okay.
and hopefully they'll come back where they're green.
Wow. I'm sorry, Mr. Orchid.
So I'll clean. Yeah, we take.
How often do you transplant an orchid, or when do you know? Other than when it's
Yeah, when it's looking sickly.
when it's really sad.
Yeah, they don't have to be done all that often. They can last in these pots for a couple of years before you need to repot them.
Okay.
Again, you know, you can kind of tell if you have a really healthy plant and big leaves and it's starting to fall over just from the weight of it, you might want to move it up to a bigger size.
Okay.
But they'll be fine in that size pot for quite some time.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we're getting down kind of to the base of the plant there.
It looks so much better.
That one we can take off. Yeah, this one actually did flower quite a bit. There's at some point.
Yeah, in its day.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and there's another one down there, so we'll take that out because we don't need that. Okay. I think we'll leave that one. Okay. So what I've done.
So when you're done, you just feel around to make sure that.
Yeah, they're kind of
are
solid. The ones that are left, they're not squishy and.
Okay. Cool.
This one, I'm not sure whether it's going to come. There's green on the top.
But it's
the bottom, this is still firm, so I'm going to leave it anyways.
Okay.
Worst case scenario is it's just going to help hold the plant into the pot.
Okay.
It may eventually rot off, but there's some good growth still there. And you can see by this plant, they tend to grow up.
Right, in
So
little layers.
new leaves will
Okay.
come out the top, so the crown of the plant kind of gets taller as it comes up.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is I've put some orchid bark in the bottom of this pot. Now, it would depend on how many roots. We don't have a lot of roots left on this plant.
Right.
So I can put quite a bit of bark in the bottom just to give it a base.
Right.
If you had lots of roots, healthy roots on there, you probably wouldn't need to put quite so much bark in to begin with. You could put
Okay.
the roots down in and tuck the bark around them.
And this is mixed with the perlite
Yeah.
is the little white
Yes.
thingies.
Yes.
Okay.
So perlite, you can actually, that's in regular potting soil as well.
Right,
And it
to
helps
give it-
just provide a little aeration.
Right.
It does hold water a bit, but
okay.
but not so much that it's going to drown the plant. So now that we have this stripped off, we're just going to basically
Is that a main root?
That was kind of the main crown of the plant. That's where the roots come out of.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave that because we need something to put in the pot. So these roots I'm going to tuck into the pot as holding roots to keep down. These ones on the top, these are going to be our aerial roots. We're going to leave them out of the pot. So
Okay.
basically I'm just going to put this down in here.
Do you want me to hold
And you
it?
can actually, sometimes these plants, as they get heavy and grow, if you've always left them facing one way, they might be growing towards the light.
Yeah.
So you can use this opportunity to kind of straighten it up.
Okay.
While you have it in the house, though, to prevent that, every month or so, just spin the pot around.
I
so
do that
it's-
to all my plants.
Yeah, so it's facing other directions.
once a week.
So we're just going to take some of this bark and kind of push it down in around these roots that are in the pot.
But you don't press it down.
No, it just kind of falls in between.
Want that?
Yeah, if you hold those out of the way, then you can tuck that down in.
Cool.
So while I'm doing this, I'll just talk a bit about watering. So the best way, and this is why you put the orchids in plastic pots inside your cover pot,
Okay.
the best way to water these, and actually for something like this would be, you could just put water right in your cover pot, set the orchid back in, let it soak for half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour.
Okay.
Take it out, dump out the excess water, and then you're good to go for probably a week to a week and a half.
Okay.
So there's a little rule of thumb that if you lift out your pot, you can usually see roots around the plant.
Oh,
If
okay.
they're silver,
Yeah?
it might need a little water. If they're green, there's enough water in there.
Oh, way cool.
Yeah, so we're just going to tuck that in. So you just want to make sure you have enough bark in there to hold your plant in place. And basically that's it. Now, the other thing you do not want to do in terms of watering
Yeah.
is ice cubes. So
So when it's a few years since I heard that. Tropical plants, and this is a tropical plant. Tropical
Yes.
plants and ice cubes make no sense to me.
exactly. So how that started was people tend to overwater their houseplants.
Right.
Which is what happened to this one, and that's why you had all that root rot.
Right.
So a grower decided, how can I get a measured amount of water so people aren't drowning their plants?
Okay.
So he suggested the size of an ice cube. So then it started where people were just putting ice cubes on there. But exactly, your tropical plant, would you want ice on your roots? That's not beneficial to the plant.
No, they don't need to know they live in Canada.
Yeah. So basically, we usually just use lukewarm water.
Okay.
And so we're just gonna pop that back in there, and then you're gonna take that home and take care of it the way I just told you to.
You're not going in the back room
And
to be ignored.
hopefully you'll see some new leaves start. It's
Wow.
gonna take a while, but new leaves and eventually some new roots. And
So fertilizer, do I fertilize?
right now, no, we've given it enough shock.
Oh.
So you're gonna let it
Oh,
Just-
the compost would have been a big shock, yeah.
you're gonna let it sit for a couple of months, and then you could use a diluted fertilizer.
Okay. A
just-
20-20-20 or?
Yeah,
Is that-
well, or anything made for flowering
Orchids?
houseplants. You can get
Okay.
specific orchid
Fertilizer?
fertilizer as well, but it's not necessary.
Okay.
But yeah, so just let it go for a few months before you start something like that.
Another thing is humidity. When they're in the tropics, it is very humid
Yes.
typically.
And that's why they grow the aerial roots.
Okay.
So you can spray those. If you have a little spray mister, you
Yeah.
could do that every once in a while. Just give it a spritz. That helps increase the humidity around it.
And what about?
Tray of pebbles?
Yeah.
You can do that too. So if you have multiple plants, if you have a tray of some
Yeah.
sort,
Yeah.
put some pebbles, gravel in the bottom, decorative rock,
Yeah.
and put your plants on it. And then you don't even need the cover pot because
I
they
was
can
just
absorb
gonna
some of the
say.
moisture. You could set the plant right down if you wanted to. The only
Okay.
thing is you want to have water, so you're going to put water in the pebbles,
Yeah.
but you don't want it to come up the pot. You want the pot sitting on the pebbles above it. So as that water evaporates, it creates moisture.
Okay.
And that's what your aerial roots are going to absorb. I just wanted to
Okay.
quickly show this one. This is an orchid that's in the moss rather than, you can see the green roots in there.
Wow. That's so cool.
So with the moss, you have to be extra careful about watering because it holds water.
Okay.
So yeah, you'd want to water them a little less.
This is what your roots should look like.
Yeah, when we took that, it should have been like this.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. So the moss, even less watering.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so do you take it out to feel how wet it is?
You can just stick your finger in it and you'll be able to tell.
Okay. Stay tuned. We have more on orchids. I'm learning a lot. Welcome back, and a few more little pointers on light.
Yes.
Do I put it under lights? Because I do have lights.
Oh, well, if you have grow lights, you could, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's-
Especially through the winter.
Yes, definitely in the winter, where the light levels are less outside.
Right. Otherwise,
Otherwise, they like bright indirect light. You can put them in a window.
Yeah.
You just don't want it right up against the glass because the glass will magnify the sun as it comes through. So you could have burn marks on the actual leaves. So
Okay.
back away from the window a little bit, particularly in the summer.
Right.
In the winter, you can move it a little bit closer, but then you want to be careful of the cold air. So.
okay. What? Never thought of that.
But yeah, if you got grow lights in your house, that's perfect. And actually this one, because you want to baby it a little bit, might be a good idea just to start it out under the grow lights, just to kind of,
Okay. I've got some
Take some of the
plants
stress
under
away.
the
Yeah.
grow lights now.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. You'll be fine. And a friend of mine talked about the leaves on hers were sticky.
yes. So that's probably an indication that she has some sort of pest on there.
Okay.
There's a couple that maybe orchids are susceptible to, one being mealybug and one being scale. So
Okay.
mealybug, if you look usually they're on the back sides of the leaves or on the new growth or right down in the centers. Looks like a little piece of cotton, just a white cotton
Okay.
bit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the cocoon that the bug builds on there.
okay.
So
Yeah.
they're fairly easy to get rid of. Basically, wipe them off, wash them off. If they're down in the little crooks of the plant down in here, I would get a Q-tip with
Q-tip?
a little bit of rubbing alcohol
Okay.
and wipe them out that way.
Okay.
This one has no bugs, so we don't have to worry about that. The other one is scale. So scale is, it forms a hard shell.
On the underside?
Yeah, it could be on the underside of the leaves. It could also be if you had flower spikes, it might be up the flower spike as well.
Okay, all right.
But they form like a little hard shell over top of the actual bug.
Yeah.
And they eat the sap or drink the sap out of the plant, and then
Okay.
their excrement is that sticky stuff.
Oh,
So
okay.
those are a little bit harder to get off. You actually have to like scrape them off. And then once you've scraped off the hard things, again, I would
Would
take...
you do it with, again, alcohol on a Q-tip?
Yeah, I
or-
was going to say, after you get the hard shell off, then
Yeah.
I would kind of wipe it off with paper towels or Q-tips or something with a bit of alcohol just to clean that off.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Now, this particular plant, this is a miniature
This
orchid,
is
so
so pretty.
it's the exact same variety,
I
which
just
these are
like-
all Phalaenopsis orchids. We didn't mention that at the beginning, but they're the most common ones that are sold in grocery stores, florist shops, Home Depot.
I really like this.
It's cute. So this one has been planted with an aloe vera, actually, as a little terrarium.
Okay.
So you do have to, the orchid is in a separate pot. I don't even see through the side here. So it can be removed out of there.
Okay.
But yeah, kind of similar watering. You don't want to overwater them in here. But the reason I wanted to show this one is just to show how your flowers will die as they age. So there's ones on here.
Right.
And it just kind of, they usually wilt over, then
Yeah.
they start to dry. This one's a little bit dry, it's kind of crispy, so, and they
Oh.
just pop off like that.
Yeah.
So as your orchid ages, this will happen. It'll start from the bottom because the new ones come out at the tip of the stems.
Right.
So don't be afraid, just pull those off.
Okay. Or they fall off.
Yeah, they will fall off.
This is so pretty. So, the aloe vera and this, the watering is about this, or you've got moss in this one.
The moss is kind of just decorative in this pot.
Okay.
There is soil in there, and the orchid is in its own little pot.
Oh, it must be such a cute little pot.
Yeah, it's a tiny one.
That's really, really pretty.
Yeah, so after this stops blooming, I mean, this is planted like this for decorative purposes. Once
Right.
this stops blooming, I would probably take the orchid out of there and have it on its own.
Oh, okay. And then put something else in the terrarium?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. If there are more questions that you may have about orchids, please send them to me at kmbruce@rogers.com, and I'll ask Corinne. Or just come to
into
the store. And if you've got something that looked like this, don't bring it, but you know how to
There is
change it. Yeah. Green, to me, green is hope.
Yes.
But I don't know, or I didn't know enough about orchids and figure that's it was so.
And a
ugly.
lot of people will throw it out once it starts blooming. But you don't
Me.
have to do that.
No.
As I said before, it might take a while to get it back on its regular bloom cycle, but once it does that, it'll probably bloom every year for you. So, yeah, as long as it's given the right conditions.
I thank you so very much, and thank you for joining us. I learned a ton, and my poor orchid has new life. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
So good. And thanks for joining me. If you've got other topics you want to hear about, please let me know. Bye for now.